interdisciplinary scholar, polymath, poet, and playwright. He has a PhD from UTB, and he has 2 books, Diaphysics and Hear the Screams of the Butterfly. Diaphysics is a book about kind of spiral dynamics and the philosophy of J.T. Fraser. And then Hear the Screams of the Butterfly is a story of a young man who drives himself mad when faced with unrequited love. So we're going to hear a few words from him.
All right. So, as she said, my name is Troy Camplin. I have a PhD from UT Dallas in the humanities. I was actually recruited at UT Dallas because of my bizarre interdisciplinary background, where not only do I have a master's in English, but I have a bachelor's degree in recombinant gene technology with a minor in chemistry. And they thought that that seemed to be a perfectly reasonable combination, and almost no one else did. In other words, I found my kind of people. And indeed I did. There's some really interesting, fantastic people at UT Dallas. People on my dissertation included Fred Turner, who is a polymath himself. He's a poet. He writes science fiction, epic poetry. And his father is the famous anthropologist Victor Turner. And it was funny because one day in one of his classes, I proceeded to explain my background. Now, again, like I said, Fred Turner's father was the world famous anthropologist. Fred Turner himself attended Oxford. And so he has this, incredible educational background. And one day in the class, he asked me to, he asked everybody actually to give their background. And I said, oh, well, I was born in South Bend, Indiana, but I was raised in Kentucky. My father is a coal miner with an 8th grade education. I was raised in a fundamentalist Baptist church, but I've proceeded to go study molecular biology. And he leans up over the table and he goes, how on earth did the two of us come to the same conclusions? Indeed. I'm sure I quipped something along the lines of, well, that must indicate it's true. And I bring that interdisciplinary background, though. That interdisciplinary background and, I guess somewhat unusual background, life experiences and so forth, into my work. Whether it's my book Diaphysics, which is a work of philosophy, which is extremely interdisciplinary. I bring a combination of information theory and complexity and self-organization and evolution and cosmological evolution all together to try to understand the laws that have emerged in the cosmos at different levels of reality, whether it's the physical reality, biological reality, psychological, or social. And I argue that indeed we keep seeing these same rules emerging over time. The other book is seemingly quite different. It is the story of, Hear the Screams of the Butterfly is the story of a young man who is writing from a mental hospital. And he is trying to sort of write his way out. He's trying to come to grips with all the things that drove him to be there. He's trying to tell the story of the woman that he fell in love with and who would not return that love to him in quite the way that he wanted. And he eventually allows it to drive him crazy. And so he's trying to sort of come to grips with it and to try to figure out, how did I get here, and how can, maybe hopefully this will help to bring him out. It doesn't. If any, it sort of gets worse as things move on. And that actually that novella was inspired in no small part by Goethe's novella The Sorrows of Young Werther. And so I guess one could see it sort of as a modernization, an up-to-date version of that. Where mine's a little more optimistic, where Werther commits suicide at the end. My guy's still alive, but just crazy. I guess you could call that optimistic, relative to Goethe anyway. And in many ways, in many ways, I guess I'm sort of chasing Goethe. Because a lot of my background, a lot of my own pathways have followed a lot of sort of what he has done. My interest in both science and philosophy on the one hand, literature on the other. Like Goethe, I write poetry, I write plays, I write novels. Like Goethe, I do science, including the social sciences, many publications in economics and sociology and psychology. And so, not that I expect to ever catch him, because who can? No one has yet. It always sort of feels like that. I guess that's what I'm doing is always chasing him. And yes, just like Goethe, I am also writing my own Faust play, so seems to always be kept in mind in many ways. Some of the same interests, some of the same concerns keep rising regardless. So that's a little bit about me. I want to get a little bit more personal. I'm married and I have 3 children. My daughter is 10, my son is 7, and I have 2 sons. My older son is 7 and my younger son is 5. And my 7-year-old has autism, and we're 99.99% sure it runs in the family, since I've been diagnosed with Asperger's, and I would bet good money that my maternal grandfather had Asperger's. Upon learning a great deal about it. And so that also necessarily informs sort of the way I view things, and that there's a distinct possibility that with that in mind, my narrator in Hear the Screams of the Butterfly may or may not be somewhere on the spectrum, and that may or may not explain a lot. Because what else could I write? So that's another little, interesting tidbit that might make the book a little bit more interesting. All right, so with that said, I thank you. I don't know if there's questions and answers, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
All right, well, thank you so much.